Claire stood in front of the bathroom mirror, carefully applying her lipstick. The house was quiet except for the sound of her husband moving around downstairs. After 15 years of marriage, she'd perfected the morning routine. Coffee ready by 6:30. Kids' lunches packed, his shirts pressed and hanging in the closet. She looked at her reflection and wondered when she'd stopped recognizing herself. Somewhere between the PTA meetings and charity galas, between raising 2 kids and managing a household, the girl she used to be had disappeared. Not that she regretted any of it. She loved her children more than anything. And her husband, well, she'd built her entire life around making him happy. Thomas was a successful real estate developer. Their house sat in one of those neighborhoods, where every lawn was perfect and every car was expensive. Claire knew what people thought when they saw her life from the outside. Lucky, blessed, living the dream. If only they knew how lonely a dream could feel. "Claire," Thomas called from downstairs. "Have you seen my blue tie?" "In your closet, left side," she called back, already knowing exactly where it was because she'd organized his closet last weekend while he was at the office. Again. He'd been working late a lot lately, sometimes until 9 or 10 at night. Claire told herself it was just a busy season. He was closing several big deals. That's what he said anyway. But there was something different about him these past few months. The way he guarded his phone, how he'd step out of the room to take calls. The cologne he'd started wearing, a new brand she hadn't bought him. She'd tried to bring it up once, carefully, not wanting to sound like she was accusing him of anything. "You've been working so much lately, is everything okay?" He'd looked at her like she was crazy. "What's that supposed to mean? I'm building a business, Claire. Someone has to pay for all this." He'd gestured around their expensive kitchen. The implication was clear. She didn't work. She didn't contribute financially. She should be grateful and keep quiet. That conversation had been 3 weeks ago, and Claire hadn't brought it up since. Now she came downstairs to find Thomas already headed for the door, barely glancing at her. "I've got breakfast meetings all week," he said. "Don't wait up tonight, the Henderson project is killing me." "Okay," she said to his back as he walked out. No kiss goodbye, no, have a good day. Just the sound of his car starting and pulling away. Claire sighed and turned to wake up the kids. Megan was 13 and already testing boundaries. Tyler was 10 and still sweet, still hugged her without being embarrassed. She got them fed and off to school, then stood in her pristine kitchen, wondering what to do with another empty day. Her phone rang. Her sister, Beth. "Hey, you want to grab lunch today?" Beth asked. "I'm downtown and thought we could try that new Italian place." Claire jumped at the chance. Anything to break up the monotony. "Yes, absolutely." Noon? The restaurant was one of those trendy places with exposed brick and expensive salads. Claire arrived first and snagged a table by the window. She was scrolling through her phone when Beth arrived, pulling her into a hug. "You look tired," Beth said, studying her face. "Thanks," Claire laughed. "Just what every woman wants to hear." "I mean it, though. Are you okay? When's the last time you did something for yourself?" Claire opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. She honestly couldn't remember. Her days revolved around everyone else's needs, Thomas's schedule, the kids' activities, the house. When did she last read a book she wanted to read? Go somewhere she wanted to go? They ordered lunch and Beth was telling a story about her chaotic morning when Claire's attention drifted to the window. A familiar car was pulling up outside. Thomas's car. Her heart did a little jump. Maybe he'd come to surprise her, join them for lunch. That would be nice. Romantic, even. But Thomas didn't come into their restaurant. He walked past, heading somewhere else. And he wasn't alone. There was a woman with him. Young, maybe late 20s. Dark hair, confident stride, expensive outfit. They were laughing about something, their body language easy and familiar. Claire's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "Earth to Claire," Beth said. Then she followed Claire's gaze out the window. "Who's that?" "Thomas," Claire whispered. "And I have no idea who she is. They watched as Thomas opened the door to the restaurant next door for the woman. His hand touched the small of her back as she walked in. It was a small gesture, but intimate. The kind of touch you don't do with a coworker. Beth reached across the table and grabbed Claire's hand. Okay, don't jump to conclusions. It could be a business lunch. But Claire's gut was screaming at her. This wasn't business. She knew it the same way you know it's going to rain before the first drop falls. Some things you just feel in your bones. I need to go, Claire said, standing up. Wait, what are you going to do? March in there and confront him? Claire stopped. Was that what she should do? But the thought of making a scene, of being that wife, made her feel sick. No. I just need to go home. The drive back was a blur. Claire's hands shook on the steering wheel. She told herself she was overreacting. Lots of men had business lunches with female colleagues. It didn't mean anything. But the way he'd touched her back, the way they'd been laughing, the fact that he'd said he had breakfast meetings all week, not lunch meetings. When Thomas came home that night at almost 10, Claire was waiting in the living room. Good meeting? She asked, trying to keep her voice neutral. Exhausting, he said, loosening his tie. The Henderson deal is more complicated than we thought. I saw you today. He froze for just a second. What? Downtown, having lunch. You weren't at a breakfast meeting, were you? Thomas's face shifted, through several expressions before settling on annoyance. Are you spying on me now? I was having lunch with Beth and I happened to see you walk by. Who was that woman? A colleague. Her name is Brooke. She's helping with the Henderson project. He said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Why are you being paranoid? I'm not being paranoid. You said you'd be in meetings all day. You specifically said breakfast meetings. Plans changed, Claire. Jesus, am I supposed to report my entire schedule to you? I'm working my tail off to provide for this family, and you're interrogating me about who I have lunch with? He was turning it around on her, making her feel guilty for asking questions. Claire recognized the tactic but didn't know how to fight it. I just feel like something's off lately, she said quietly. You're always working late. You're distant. You barely talk to me anymore. Thomas sighed heavily, like she was being incredibly unreasonable. I'm under a lot of stress right now. These deals are worth millions. I'm sorry if I'm not being attentive enough, but I'm trying to secure our future here. Our future, Claire repeated. When did we stop being partners and become just roommates who happen to have kids together? That's dramatic, Thomas said, heading for the stairs. I'm exhausted, Claire. Can we not do this tonight? And just like that, he was gone. Oofings. Her standing in the living room with all her questions unanswered and a sick feeling in her stomach. Claire sat down on the couch, staring at nothing. Maybe she was being paranoid. Maybe the stress was making her see things that weren't there. Thomas had a point. She didn't work. She didn't understand the pressure he was under. Maybe she should be more supportive, less suspicious. But that night, lying in bed next to him while he snored, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that her perfect life was a house of cards, and something was about to make it all come tumbling down. She thought about that woman, Brooke, the way Thomas had touched her back, the easy way they'd laughed together. When was the last time Thomas had laughed like that with her? Claire turned over, facing away from her husband, and made a decision. She wasn't going to let this go. Not yet. She needed to know the truth, even if part of her was terrified of what that truth might be. Tomorrow she'd start paying closer attention to the phone calls, the late nights, the little details that didn't quite add up. She'd spent 15 years being the perfect wife, trusting completely, never questioning. Maybe it was time to stop being so perfect and start being more aware. Because deep down, in a place she didn't want to acknowledge, Claire already knew the truth. She'd known it the moment she saw them together. Some things, you just know. The question now was what she was going to do about it. The charity gala had been Claire's project for 6 months. She'd spent countless hours organizing every detail, from the venue to the silent auction items. It was the social event of the season, 300 of the city's most prominent residents gathering to raise money for the children's hospital. Claire stood in front of her closet, staring at her options. She'd bought a new dress for the occasion, a deep navy that made her feel elegant. As she slipped it on, she caught sight of herself in the mirror. For once, she actually felt pretty. She'd gotten her hair done that afternoon, and the stylist had talked her into trying something new with her makeup. "You look beautiful," her daughter Megan said from the doorway. Claire turned and smiled. "Thank you, sweetie. That means a lot. Is Dad going with you?" "Yes, he said he'd meet me there. He had a late meeting." Of course he did, but tonight was important, and Thomas had promised he'd show up on time for once. This was her night, her accomplishment. Claire arrived at the hotel ballroom at 7. The space looked perfect, exactly as she'd envisioned. Soft lighting, elegant centerpieces, everything in place. Guests were already arriving, and she slipped into hostess mode, greeting people, making sure everyone felt welcome. By 8, Thomas still hadn't shown up. Claire checked her phone for the 10th time. No messages. She tried calling, but it went straight to voicemail. She plastered on a smile and kept circulating, but inside she was hurt. He'd promised. At 8:30, the ballroom doors opened and Thomas finally walked in. Claire felt a wave of relief, then confusion, then something colder, because Thomas wasn't alone. That woman from the restaurant, Brooke. She was with him, wearing a red dress that probably cost more than Claire's car payment. They walked in like they owned the place, Thomas's hand casually resting on her lower back. Claire's friend Patricia appeared at her elbow. "Claire, honey, who is that with Thomas?" "His business partner," Claire said automatically, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. Apparently. But the way people were looking at them, the way conversations paused as they passed, told Claire that other people saw what she was desperately trying to deny. This wasn't a business relationship. Thomas spotted Claire and came over, Brooke trailing behind him. "Sorry we're late. Traffic was terrible. He said we. "Thomas," Claire said carefully, "I wasn't expecting you to bring a guest." "Brooke's a major donor for the project," he said smoothly. "I thought she should see where the money's going." "Brooke, this is my wife, Claire. Claire, Brooke Sterling." Brooke extended her hand, her smile sharp. "It's so nice to finally meet you. Thomas talks about you all the time." The way she said it made it clear that Thomas didn't talk about Claire in the way a devoted husband should. Claire shook her hand briefly, feeling like she was in some terrible dream. "Well, I should get back to my hosting duties," Claire said. "Thomas, can I talk to you for a minute?" "Actually, I need to introduce Brooke to the Henderson contacts," Thomas said, already moving away. "We'll catch up later." And just like that, he was gone, leaving Claire standing there while whispers rippled through the crowd around her. The next hour was torture. Claire watched as Thomas and Brooke worked the room together. They had an easy chemistry, finishing each other's sentences, laughing at inside jokes. Brooke touched his arm constantly, leaned in close when she talked to him. And Thomas let her. Several people asked Claire who Brooke was, their questions loaded with curiosity and pity. She gave the same answer each time. Business partner. New project. Nothing to worry about. But she could see they didn't believe her. Around 10, Claire needed a break. She headed to the bar, ordered a glass of wine, and tried to collect herself. This was supposed to be her night. 6 months of work, and now all anyone would remember was Thomas parading his mistress around like it was perfectly normal. "That dress is so cute," a voice said beside her. Brooke had appeared at the bar, ordering a cosmopolitan. Very classic. Very safe. Claire turned to look at her. Up close, she was even younger than Claire had thought. Maybe 28 at most. Perfect skin, bright eyes, the confidence of someone who'd never doubted herself. "Thank you," Claire said, keeping her voice level. "You know I have to admire you," Brooke continued, her voice just loud enough that several nearby people could hear. "Being married for so long, raising kids, managing a household, it must be exhausting trying to keep things interesting after all these years." Claire's fingers tightened on her wine glass. "I'm sorry, what exactly are you trying to say?" "Oh, nothing bad. Just that it takes a lot of energy to maintain a relationship, doesn't it? Especially when you're not getting any younger." Brooke glanced at Claire's dress. "I mean, that style is very age-appropriate. Very conservative." People were definitely listening now. Claire could feel eyes on them. Conversations pausing. "If you'll excuse me," Claire said, trying to walk away with dignity intact. But Brooke followed her, her heels clicking on the marble floor. You know what's funny? Thomas was just telling me the other day how he appreciates someone who understands ambition. Someone who's building something, not just coasting on their husband's success. Claire stopped walking, turned around. That's enough. Is it though? Brooke's smile was sweet, but her eyes were cold. I mean, you seem nice and all, but let's be real. You're not exactly bringing much to the table anymore, are you? When's the last time you had an interesting conversation? When's the last time you challenged him? The words hit like physical blows. Every insecurity Claire had ever felt about not working, about dedicating her life to her family, was being thrown in her face. In public. At her own event. Thomas loves routine, Brooke continued, warming to her theme. A small crowd had gathered now, pretending not to watch but clearly riveted. He told me how nice it is to come home to dinner on the table and clean laundry. But you know what else he said? That sometimes a man needs more than just a housekeeper. He needs a partner, an equal. Claire's face burned. She looked around for Thomas, found him across the room. He was watching this happen. He could see Brooke publicly humiliating her, and he was just standing there doing nothing. Their eyes met across the room. Claire silently begged him to step in, to defend her, to tell this woman to stop. But Thomas just looked uncomfortable and turned away, starting a conversation with someone else. That's when Claire understood. This wasn't just about an affair. This was calculated. Thomas wanted people to see him with Brooke. He wanted everyone to know he'd upgraded, moved on to someone younger and more exciting. And he was perfectly fine with his wife being humiliated in the process. You know what the saddest part is? Brooke said, lowering her voice to a false whisper that still carried. He doesn't even hide it anymore. He tells me everything. About how boring his home life is. About how he feels trapped. About how he wishes he'd made different choices. She paused. About how much better I am in bed. The crowd around them gasped. Someone dropped a glass. This had gone from uncomfortable to completely inappropriate, and everyone knew it. Claire felt something break inside her. Not her heart that had broken the moment Thomas looked away. Something else. Something that had been holding her back, keeping her polite and proper and afraid of making waves. She looked at Brooke. Really looked at her. Saw the cruelty behind the pretty face. Saw someone who enjoyed causing pain. Who got off on stealing another woman's husband and rubbing it in her face. Then Claire looked around at the crowd. Some looked horrified. Others looked uncomfortable. A few looked like they were enjoying the drama. These were people she'd known for years. People she'd organized charity events with. People she'd considered friends. And they were all watching her public humiliation like it was entertainment. Claire set down her wine glass very carefully. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but clear. You're absolutely right, Brooke. I have been coasting. I've been so busy taking care of everyone else that I forgot to take care of myself. Thank you for the reminder. She turned and walked toward the exit, her head high. Behind her, she could hear the explosion of whispers, everyone talking at once about what had just happened. Thomas caught up with her in the lobby. Claire, wait, she spun around. Wait, you want me to wait? I just got publicly humiliated by your mistress while you stood there and watched. And you want me to wait? You're making a scene, he hissed, looking around nervously. I'm making a scene? Are you kidding me right now? Claire laughed, but there was no humor in it. You brought your affair to my charity event. You let her insult me in front of everyone we know. You didn't defend me. You didn't stop her. You just stood there like a coward. She's had a lot to drink, Thomas said weakly. She didn't mean, don't, Claire cut him off. Don't you dare make excuses for her. For you. I know exactly what this is. You want out of our marriage, but you're too much of a coward to just say it. So instead you parade her around, let her humiliate me, hoping I'll be the one to leave. Well, congratulations, Thomas. Mission accomplished. She turned to leave, but he grabbed her arm. Where are you going? Home to our children. Remember them? The two people we created together while we were making vows about forever? We need to talk about this, he said. There's nothing to talk about. You've made your choice very clear. Claire pulled her arm free. I'll be gone by the time you get home. Sleep well. She walked out into the night, her hands shaking, her eyes burning with unshed tears. But she didn't cry, not yet. She'd save her tears for when she was alone, when no one could see. As she got in her car, Claire caught sight of herself in the rearview mirror. She looked different. Older. Sadder. But also something else. determined. Thomas had humiliated her. He'd let another woman attack her publicly. He'd shown her exactly how little he respected her, how little he valued 15 years of marriage and partnership. Fine. If that's how he wanted to play it, Claire would show him just how big a mistake he'd made. She might not have Brooke's youth or confidence, but she had something better. She had knowledge. She had access. And she had absolutely nothing left to lose. The perfect wife was dead. What rose from those ashes was going to surprise everyone, especially Thomas. Claire didn't go home that night. She couldn't face the house, the bed she'd shared with Thomas, the life that now felt like a complete lie. Instead, she drove to her sister's apartment and showed up at midnight. Mascara streaked down her face, finally letting herself fall apart. Beth pulled her inside, got her into comfortable clothes, and let her cry until there were no tears left. Then they sat on the couch with tea, and Claire told her everything. Not just about the gala, but about all of it. The months of suspicion, the lies, the way Thomas had gaslit her into thinking she was paranoid. "What are you going to do?" Beth asked. Claire stared into her tea. "I don't know. Everyone expects me to either scream and throw things or just quietly accept it. But I'm tired of doing what everyone expects." "So what do you want to do?" That was the question, wasn't it? What did Claire want? For so long, she'd defined herself by what other people needed, what Thomas needed, what the kids needed, what society expected of a wife and mother. She'd forgotten how to want things for herself. "I want to understand what happened to my marriage," she finally said. "I want to know the truth. All of it." The next morning, Claire went home. Thomas wasn't there. She found a note saying he was staying at a hotel to give them both space. The coward couldn't even face her, but his absence gave Claire an opportunity. She started in his home office, a room she rarely entered because Thomas had always claimed he needed privacy for work. Now she understood why. She found his laptop password written in an old notebook, tried it, and got in. What she found made her stomach turn. Emails to Brooke going back 8 months, texts that left nothing to the imagination, hotel receipts, restaurant bills. He'd been spending money like crazy, and she'd never noticed because she'd trusted him to handle the business finances. But there was more. As Claire dug deeper, she found documents that didn't make sense. Loan applications she'd never seen, financial statements that showed accounts she didn't know existed. Her name was on some of these documents, signatures that looked like hers but that she'd never made. Claire wasn't stupid. She'd been to college, had worked in finance before having kids. She knew what she was looking at, and it terrified her. Thomas had been forging her signature, taking out loans in her name, using her credit. Why? She spent the entire day going through documents, taking photos of everything with her phone. By evening, she had a collection of evidence that painted a disturbing picture. Thomas's business wasn't successful. It was failing. He'd been borrowing against their house, using her inheritance money from her father, maxing out credit cards she didn't know about. The expensive lifestyle, Brooke's designer clothes, the fancy restaurants, all of it was funded by debt. Debt that had Claire's name all over it. She felt sick. But she also felt something else. Anger. Cold, clarifying anger. When Thomas finally came home 2 days later, Claire was ready. She'd spent 48 hours preparing. Not emotionally, that would take much longer. But practically, she knew what she needed to do next. "We need to talk," Thomas said, standing in the doorway looking uncomfortable. "Yes, we do," Claire agreed. She was calm, which seemed to unnerve him. They sat in the living room, and Thomas launched into what was clearly a prepared speech. "I think we both know this marriage isn't working anymore. We've grown apart. It's nobody's fault, it just happens sometimes. I think we should consider separating. For the kids' sake, we should try to keep things amicable." "Amicable," Claire repeated. "That's an interesting word choice." "I'm willing to be reasonable about the settlement," Thomas continued. "You can keep the house. I'll pay child support, of course. We can work out custody arrangements that benefit everyone." "How generous of you," Claire said. "Tell me, does Brooke know about the debt?" Thomas froze. "What debt?" "The $500,000 in loans you've taken out. The maxed-out credit cards. The second mortgage on this house that I supposedly co-signed for but have no memory of signing." His face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me anymore, Thomas. I found everything, all of it. Your business is failing. You've been using my money, my credit, my inheritance to cover your losses and fund your affair." She leaned forward. You forged my signature. That's fraud. That's a crime. You're being dramatic, he said, but his voice shook. Those were just business decisions. Everything I did was to protect our family. Protect our family. You put us in debt to impress your mistress. You stole from me, Thomas. You used my father's money. The money he left me to make sure I'd always be secure. And you gambled it away on your failing business and your affair. Thomas stood up, his face red. That money was community property. What's yours is mine. That's how marriage works. Not when you take it without telling me. Not when you forge signatures. Claire stood too, meeting his eyes. I want a divorce? Fine, Thomas snapped. But don't think you're going to take me to the cleaners. I'll fight you on everything. I'm sure you will, Claire said calmly. You should know. I've already moved half the money from our joint accounts into a separate account for the kids' education. It's my inheritance money, legally mine, and I'm protecting it. You can't do that. I already did. And I've contacted a lawyer, a really good one. He's very interested in the forged signatures and the fraudulent loans. Thomas's expression shifted from anger to fear. Claire, let's not do this. We can work something out. Be reasonable. I am being reasonable. I'm protecting myself and our children from your financial recklessness and your lies. She walked to the door and opened it. I think you should leave now. This is my house too. Then I'll leave. But know this, Thomas. Every document, every email, every text message, I have copies of all of it. You want to fight dirty? You've already lost. Thomas stared at her like he'd never seen her before. Maybe he hadn't. Maybe he'd only ever seen the version of Claire he wanted to see. The compliant wife. The woman who didn't ask questions. That woman was gone. After he left, Claire sat in the quiet house and let herself process everything. She wasn't naive enough to think this would be easy. Divorce was messy, especially when money and lies were involved. Thomas would fight back. He'd try to paint her as vindictive, crazy, a woman scorned, but Claire had something he didn't expect. She had evidence, and she had patience. Over the next few weeks, Claire did something she'd never done before. She investigated her own life. She met with the forensic accountant her lawyer recommended, a sharp woman named Patricia, who specialized in uncovering hidden assets and financial fraud. What they discovered was worse than Claire had imagined. Thomas hadn't just been borrowing money. He'd been actively hiding assets, moving money through shell companies, preparing to divorce Claire while leaving her with all the debt and none of the assets. This is sophisticated, Patricia told her. He's been planning this for at least a year. Probably longer. Can we prove it? Claire asked. Oh, we can definitely prove it, but there's more you should know. Patricia pulled up a document on her computer. Your husband's business partner, Brooke Sterling? She's not just his mistress. She's been helping him hide the money. She has a background in finance. This is a coordinated effort to defraud you. Claire felt like she'd been punched. It wasn't just an affair. It wasn't just lies. This was a calculated plan to destroy her financially while making himself look like the reasonable one. What are my options? Claire asked. Well, we can report the fraud to the authorities. Forgery, tax evasion, probably several other charges. Your husband could face criminal prosecution. Claire thought about her children, about the scandal, about what it would mean for them to have their father arrested. Then she thought about what Thomas had done. How he'd stolen from her. How he'd let another woman humiliate her publicly. How he'd planned to leave her broken, while he rode off into the sunset with his mistress and her money. Let's build the strongest case possible, Claire said. I want every piece of evidence documented and verified. I want him to know exactly what he's up against. That could take time, Patricia warned. I have time, Claire said. I've spent 15 years being patient. I can be patient a little longer. She started gathering more evidence. She reached out quietly to some of Thomas's business partners, the ones she suspected might also be victims of his schemes. She didn't reveal what she knew, just asked careful questions, planted small seeds of doubt. Some of them started asking their own questions, requesting audits, pulling back from deals. Thomas's carefully constructed house of cards was starting to shake, and he didn't even know it yet. Meanwhile, Claire played the part everyone expected. The sad wife, the woman trying to hold it together for her kids. She didn't make scenes. She didn't badmouth Thomas publicly. She was dignified, quiet, seemingly defeated. Let him think she was weak. Let him think she'd roll over and accept whatever scraps he threw her way. Let him get comfortable, confident, cocky. Because Claire was learning something important. The best revenge wasn't hot and emotional. It wasn't screaming or breaking dishes or making dramatic scenes. The best revenge was cold, calculated, and absolutely devastating. And it required patience. Thomas had spent months planning to ruin her. She would spend however long it took to return the favor, and when she struck, he wouldn't see it coming until it was far too late. The perfect wife was teaching herself to be the perfect strategist, and she was a very quick learner. 2 months after the gala, Thomas made his move. His lawyer sent Claire a settlement proposal that was insulting in its arrogance. Minimal alimony for just 5 years, joint custody with him having primary decision-making power. She'd keep the house, but he'd keep his business and all its assets. And buried in the fine print was a non-disclosure agreement that would prevent her from ever talking about their marriage or divorce. Claire read it in her lawyer's office, her hands surprisingly steady. "This is absurd," her lawyer, Mitchell Grant, said. He was a veteran divorce attorney with 30 years of experience and a reputation for winning. "He's trying to intimidate you into settling quickly. He probably thinks you're too emotional or too scared to fight back." "What would happen if I signed this?" Claire asked. Mitchell looked at her like she was crazy. "You'd be financially devastated. You'd get almost nothing while he walks away with everything. Claire, you have grounds to fight this. Strong grounds." "I know," she said calmly. "I just wanted to understand his strategy." What Thomas didn't know was that in the past 2 months, Claire had been busy. Very busy. Patricia, the forensic accountant, had uncovered a web of financial crimes that was staggering in its scope. Shell companies, offshore accounts, falsified tax returns, money laundering. Thomas hadn't just been hiding assets from Claire. He'd been defrauding investors, his business partners, and the government. "We're ready," Claire told Mitchell. "Let's respond." Mitchell's response to Thomas's proposal wasn't just a counteroffer. It was a declaration of war. They laid out every piece of evidence they'd gathered. The forged signatures, the fraudulent loans, the hidden accounts. They demanded a full accounting of all assets, all income, all debts, and they made it clear that if Thomas didn't cooperate, they'd have no choice but to report the criminal activity to the appropriate authorities. Thomas's lawyer called within an hour of receiving the documents. Claire could hear him shouting through Mitchell's phone. "Your client is on very thin ice," Mitchell said calmly. "She has evidence of multiple felonies. If Mr. Hayes wants to avoid criminal prosecution, I suggest he become much more cooperative." That's when things got interesting. Thomas showed up at Claire's house that night, fury radiating off him in waves. "What the hell are you doing?" he demanded the moment she opened the door. "Protecting myself and our children," Claire said. She didn't invite him in. "You tried to defraud me, Thomas. You forged my signature. You stole my inheritance. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? You're bluffing. You don't have anything." Claire pulled out her phone and pulled up a photo, one of many she'd taken. This one showed a loan document with her forged signature next to the real one from her driver's license. The differences were subtle but clear. "I have everything," she said quietly. "Every document, every email, every text. I know about the offshore accounts. I know about the shell companies. I know you've been cooking the books on your projects and defrauding your investors." Thomas's face went from red to white. "You can't prove that. I already have. Patricia Chen is very good at her job. She found accounts even you probably forgot about." Claire stepped closer. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to withdraw that insulting settlement offer. You're going to provide a full and honest accounting of all assets and debts, and you're going to agree to a fair division. Or what? Or I give everything to the FBI, the IRS, and the SEC. Your choice." Thomas stared at her like he'd never seen her before. "Who are you?" "This isn't you." "You're right," Claire said. "The woman you married would have accepted your settlement. She would have let you walk all over her because she was too afraid of conflict, too worried about what people would think. But you killed that woman when you let your mistress humiliate her in public. This is who's left." She closed the door in his face, but Thomas wasn't done. He couldn't accept that his meek, compliant wife had outmaneuvered him. Over the next week, he tried different tactics. He called crying, apologizing, saying they could work it out. When that didn't work, he tried threats. He'd take the kids. He'd destroy her reputation. He'd make sure she got nothing. Claire stayed calm through all of it. She'd learned something important. Emotional reactions gave him power. Silence and patience were her weapons now. Then Brooke made a mistake. She showed up at Claire's house one afternoon, letting herself in through the gate like she had every right to be there. "We need to talk," Brooke announced, walking into Claire's kitchen like she owned it. "You're trespassing," Claire said, her phone already recording. "Leave now or I'll call the police. Don't be dramatic. I'm here to help you." Brooke sat down at the kitchen table uninvited. "Thomas is never going to give you what you want. He told me he'd rather burn everything down than let you win. So here's my offer. Take the settlement he proposed, walk away. I'll make sure he actually pays the alimony and you can move on with your life." Claire almost laughed. "And why would you help me?" "Because I'm tired of this drama. I want to move forward with Thomas and you're in the way." Brooke leaned forward. "Come on, Claire. You can't really think you're going to win this. You're a housewife with no job, no money of your own, no prospects. Thomas is a successful businessman. Who do you think the courts are going to favor?" "Is that really what he told you? That he's successful?" "He's a millionaire. He's in debt up to his eyeballs," Claire said. "His business is failing. He's been using my money to fund your lifestyle. Did you think those designer bags and expensive dinners were coming from his legitimate income?" Brooke's confidence flickered. "You're lying, am I? Ask him about the offshore accounts. Ask him about the loans he defaulted on. Ask him why 3 of his biggest investors have pulled out in the last month." Claire stood up. "You're welcome to him, Brooke. But you should know what you're getting. A liar, a fraud, and soon probably a criminal defendant." "You're just bitter," Brooke said, but she looked shaken. "I'm practical. You helped Thomas hide assets, helped him defraud me. That makes you an accomplice. When this all comes out, and it will, you'll go down with him." Claire opened the front door. "Now get out of my house." After Brooke left, Claire sent the recording to her lawyer. It was more evidence of conspiracy to defraud, more ammunition. The next day, Claire got a call from Mitchell. "You're not going to believe this. Brooke Sterling just called my office. She wants to make a deal." "What kind of deal?" "She's willing to testify about her involvement in hiding assets. She wants immunity in exchange for cooperation." Claire sat down heavily. Brooke was turning on Thomas. The woman who'd humiliated her publicly, who'd been so confident and cruel, was now trying to save herself. "What do you think?" Mitchell asked. "I think Thomas is about to find out what betrayal feels like," Claire said. With Brooke's cooperation, the case became airtight. She provided details about accounts Claire didn't even know existed. She had emails, texts, recordings of conversations where Thomas explicitly discussed hiding money from Claire. She was a walking, talking evidence goldmine, and she was doing it all to save her own skin. Thomas's lawyer called for an emergency meeting. When they gathered in Mitchell's conference room, Thomas looked like he'd aged 10 years. His cocky confidence was gone, replaced by barely concealed panic. "My client is prepared to make a fair offer," his lawyer began. "We're listening," Mitchell said. What they proposed was dramatically different from the original offer. Claire would get 60% of all assets, full custody of the children with generous child support, alimony for 15 years, the length of their marriage, and Thomas would pay all her legal fees. "What about the criminal charges?" Thomas's lawyer asked quietly. Claire looked at Thomas. Really looked at him. This man she'd loved, built a life with, raised children with. He'd destroyed all of it. For money. For a younger woman. For ego, she could send him to prison. She had enough evidence to put him away for years. Part of her wanted to. Wanted him to face real consequences for what he'd done. But she thought about her children. About Megan and Tyler having to visit their father in prison. About the scandal. The media attention, the way it would define them forever. "The criminal activity stops now," Claire said. "Full cooperation with any investigations. Complete financial disclosure. If I find out you've hidden even $1, if you miss even one payment, if you violate any part of our agreement, I turn everything over to the authorities." "Understood?" Thomas nodded, not meeting her eyes. "I want it in writing," Claire continued. "A clause that says any violation of the divorce agreement results in all evidence being provided to law enforcement. I want you to know that for the rest of your life I'll be watching. One mistake and you lose everything." "Agreed," his lawyer said quickly. They signed the settlement 2 weeks later. Thomas looked broken, diminished. All his swagger was gone. Claire felt nothing as she watched him sign away most of his assets. agree to support payments that would last over a decade, acknowledge that she had primary custody. As they left the lawyer's office, Thomas caught her arm. "Claire, I'm sorry. For all of it. I never meant to hurt you." She looked at his hand on her arm until he let go. "You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference. I loved you once, maybe you did, but you loved money and your ego more. That's the problem, Thomas. You were never satisfied. You always wanted more. The bigger house, the flashier car, the younger woman, and you were willing to destroy everything to get it. What about you?" he asked bitterly. "You destroyed me." "No," Claire said. "I protected myself from you. You destroyed yourself." Walking away from that building, Claire felt something she hadn't felt in months. Free. The weight of the marriage, the lies, the betrayal, all of it fell away. She'd won. Not just the divorce settlement, though that was satisfying. She'd won her self-respect back. She'd proven that she wasn't weak, wasn't stupid, wasn't just a housewife who could be pushed around. Thomas had tried to ruin her. Instead, he'd ruined himself. And the woman he'd underestimated had been the one to bring him down. 1 year later, Claire stood in front of a conference room full of women, telling her story. Not all of it, not the painful details, but the important parts. How she'd been financially abused without even realizing it. How she'd fought back. How she'd won. "The thing that saved me," she told the group, "was understanding my own finances. I'd let my husband control everything because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. I trusted him completely, and he used that trust to nearly destroy me." She was speaking at a women's financial literacy workshop, something she'd started 6 months after the divorce was finalized. It had begun as a way to process her own experience, but it had grown into something more, a way to help other women avoid the same mistakes she'd made. Life after the divorce had been harder than Claire expected, but also better in ways she couldn't have imagined. The kids had struggled at first. Megan had been angry, acting out at school. Tyler had become clingy, worried that Claire would disappear too. But with therapy and patience, they'd all started healing. Thomas had moved across the country, unable to face the social fallout from the divorce. His reputation was ruined. Several of his business partners had sued him. He'd lost almost everything. He paid his support obligations on time, probably because he was terrified of what Claire would do if he didn't. But he rarely called the kids. Brooke had disappeared too, moving on to find another wealthy man to target. Claire had seen her once, 6 months ago, in a coffee shop. They'd made eye contact across the room. Brooke had looked away first, hurrying out without getting her order. "After the divorce, I had to figure out who I was," Claire told the workshop attendees. "I'd been a wife for so long I'd forgotten how to be just myself. It was terrifying, but it was also freeing." She'd gone back to school, taking online courses in financial planning. She'd started her consulting business, helping women understand their household finances, spot signs of financial abuse, and protect themselves. She'd even started dating again, though cautiously. She wasn't looking for another husband. She was looking for herself first. The woman who'd been publicly humiliated at that charity gala felt like a different person now. That Claire had been scared of conflict, scared of losing her comfortable life, scared of being alone. This Claire knew she could survive anything. She'd already proven it. After the workshop, a young woman approached her nervously. She couldn't have been more than 30 with a baby on her hip. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" she asked. They sat in a quiet corner while the woman, whose name was Ashley, told her story. It was painfully familiar. A controlling husband, money that disappeared, credit cards she didn't know about. Ashley was starting to suspect something was wrong but was afraid to look too closely. "What if I'm wrong?" Ashley asked. "What if I'm just being paranoid and I ruin my marriage by not trusting him?" Claire took her hand. "Trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And here's the thing. If you're wrong, if you look into the finances and everything is fine, then great. Your husband should understand why you need that reassurance. But if you're right, then the sooner you know, the sooner you can protect yourself." She gave Ashley her card and some resources for checking credit reports and bank statements. Watching the young woman leave, Claire felt a sense of purpose she'd never had before. This was her calling, helping women find their strength before it was too late. Her phone buzzed. A text from Megan. "Can we get pizza for dinner? Tyler wants pepperoni." Claire smiled. The normal everyday texts from her daughter meant more to her now than they used to. This was her real life. Her kids, her work, her slowly rebuilding sense of self. That evening, sitting at the dinner table with Megan and Tyler, both kids talking over each other about their day, Claire felt something she hadn't felt in years. Content. Not happy exactly, not yet, but content. At peace. Mom, are you okay? Tyler asked, noticing she'd gotten quiet. Yeah, baby. I'm good. Just thinking about how lucky I am to have you two. Even though we drive you crazy? Megan asked with a grin. Especially because you drive me crazy. Later, after the kids were in bed, Claire sat on her back porch with a glass of wine, looking at the stars. She thought about the woman she'd been a year ago. Devastated, humiliated, scared. She thought about Thomas wherever he was now. Did he ever think about what he'd lost? Not just the money or the house or his reputation, but his family, his children's respect, the woman who'd loved him for 15 years and would have done anything for him. Claire hoped he did. Hoped he understood that he hadn't just lost a divorce settlement. He'd lost something infinitely more valuable, and he'd thrown it away for ego and youth and the illusion of something better. Her phone rang, an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. Claire? The voice was hesitant, female. It's Brooke. Claire's hand tightened on the phone. What do you want? I needed to call. To apologize. For everything. Brooke's voice cracked. What I did to you at that gala, the things I said, helping Thomas hide money from you, all of it. It was horrible. You didn't deserve any of it. No, I didn't, Claire agreed. I was young and stupid, and I thought I was so clever, stealing someone's husband. I thought I was winning. Brooke laughed bitterly. I wasn't winning anything. I was helping a con artist rip off his wife and feeling proud of myself for it. Why are you calling me now? Because I just found out I'm going through the same thing. Different man, same story. And I realized this is karma. This is what I deserve for what I did to you. She was crying now. I'm so sorry, Claire. I know it doesn't change anything, but I needed you to know. Claire sat with that for a moment. Part of her wanted to hang up, wanted to tell Brooke she got exactly what she deserved. But a bigger part of her remembered being that young, remembered making mistakes, remembered thinking she knew everything when she really knew nothing. Brooke, you were awful to me. What you did was cruel and deliberate, but you also did me a favor. What? You showed me who Thomas really was. You showed me what my marriage really was. If you hadn't been so publicly horrible, I might have stayed. I might have kept ignoring all the warning signs. Kept playing the perfect wife while my husband destroyed me financially. So in a weird way, thank you. Brooke was quiet for a long moment. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I'm not forgiving you. I'm just done carrying around anger about it. That's not for you. That's for me. Claire stood up, walking to the edge of her porch. If you're really in a bad situation now, get help. Don't make my mistakes. Don't trust someone just because you love them. Protect yourself. Document everything. And don't wait for someone to save you. Save yourself. After they hung up, Claire felt lighter somehow. The anger she'd been holding on to. The bitterness about the humiliation, it had been weighing her down without her realizing it. Letting it go felt like setting down something heavy she'd been carrying too long. The next day, Claire got a call from Mitchell, her lawyer. I thought you should know. Thomas is being investigated by the IRS. Apparently, they found some discrepancies in his tax returns that our evidence prompted them to look into more closely. Will he go to jail? Possibly. Depends on what they find and whether he cooperates. Mitchell paused. How do you feel about that? Claire thought about it. Really thought about it. I feel like he made his choices and now he has to live with the consequences. Just like we all do. That's very zen of you. I'm trying this new thing where I don't let my ex-husband's problems become my problems. It's surprisingly freeing. 6 months after that, Claire opened her own office. Not just a home-based consulting business anymore, but an actual office with staff. She'd hired 2 other financial consultants, both women who'd been through their own divorces and wanted to help others. On opening day, her sister Beth stood beside her holding a bottle of champagne. Look at you, Beth said. From devastated housewife to successful businesswoman in 18 months. I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of me too, Claire said, and meant it. That night alone in her house, Claire looked at herself in the mirror. Really looked. She saw gray hair she'd stopped covering up, laugh lines around her eyes, a face that had seen pain but survived it. She looked older than she had 2 years ago, but also stronger, more real.